Once upon a time, there were wondrous contraptions. Nearly everyone had one. These devices were important to us, but they could only ever do one thing at a time. They couldn't call anyone and have a conversation. They couldn't log in to any network of information. They couldn't even play videos. You needed an entirely different device for that. They could only do one thing. Its singular purpose was to refract light, filter an image through a lens, and capture that image forever. Or maybe for a couple of decades. You had to go to a special store just to develop the film. They would hang up the print from this camera in a very dark room using a special solution, and slowly, ever slowly, the image would appear on the glossy paper. During that process, you hoped and prayed for those few days that the image you captured with your camera would be the same one you saw on the page as it was developed. But camera technology has been long in the making, longer than you can truly imagine. The version of a camera I'm speaking about was invented in 1816, but throughout human history, we have tried and tried to capture a single image and keep it forever. I am fascinated by the earliest form of this, called the camera obscura. The earliest written record of the camera obscura theory can be found in the studies of Chinese philosopher and founder of Mohism, Mozi, who lived from 470 to 390 BC. He recorded that the image in a camera obscura is flipped upside down because light travels in straight lines from its source. What this means is that the camera as we know it took 2,500 years to develop. Human history is just so much longer than this moment we are in. The phones we have are kind of magical. They took over 2 millennia to develop. We are moving fast now, but we are always building on the slowness of millions of people before us. Camera obscura, meaning dark room in Latin, is a box-shaped device used as an aid for drawing or entertainment, also referred to as a pinhole image. It lets light in through a small opening on one side and projects a reversed and inverted image on the other. As the name suggests, many historical camera obscura experiments were performed in dark rooms. The surrounding of the projected image had to be relatively dark for the image to be clear. And the truth is, the human eye works a lot like the camera obscura. Both have an opening, pupil, biconvex lens for refracting light, and a surface where the image is formed, a retina. Early camera obscura were often large and often installed inside entire rooms or tents. Later, portable versions made from wooden boxes often had a lens instead of a pinhole, which would allow the user to adjust the focus. Some camera obscura boxes also featured an angled mirror, allowing the image to be projected the right way up. Leonardo da Vinci and Vermeer were early adopters, using it in their painting process, projecting an image onto a canvas and then drawing it as the basis of their piece. Now, there are many metaphors for the art of focus. Why am I choosing this one? Why am I so drawn to the camera obscura, that which obscures something so that a small pinhole can become bright, then focused, then completely clear? I think it's something about the mystical experience of waiting for something to become clear, waiting for an image to develop. And this mystical experience is in some ways, in our modern moment, a lost art. Waiting for the next right thing to come into focus. My friend is a photographer. She refers to the darkroom as her sanctuary, the place where she hides from the rest of the world while wondering and hoping and praying that the image that will appear is the one she meant to capture. But the image will not resolve itself immediately onto the page. You have to wait for it. You have to pause. Within the forced pause and within the enclosed space, some alchemy is taking place. And while I am often a futurist and can certainly be accused as one, I do believe wisdom is found in the waiting, in the magic between taking and receiving an image. I don't relate to selfie culture or the constant editing and doctoring of images taken on a cell phone, a million clicks just to find the right look. I don't think photos should even really happen at the speed of light with all that immediacy. No, I think a lot about the way our brains are receiving so much new information all the time at this warp speed, and the world demands then an immediate and pithy response without a pause in between. And truthfully, sometimes I struggle with the 6 days in between the Sundays to come up with a response for you in this moment. We need time between receiving new information and producing our own response. This pause is sacred. It deserves protection. It is the space between receiving and responding, and we can slow our response time. The other thing I love about the camera Obscura and these early cameras is how they could only do one thing at a time. As a device, it could not do 19 things, just the one for which it was made, and that was miracle enough. To turn our eye towards a single focus is still a complete miracle in this time we are living through. And at UUCA, for example, we may practice sometimes the sacred no. Not because your idea is unworthy, but because we are narrowing our focus and thus expanding our power. See, the world calls to your attention in a million superficial and meaningful ways. You could write the sermon. You could master the instrument, read the novel, finish the article, complete the painting, perfect the skill, practice more fully. You could finish the puzzle, languish in the deep conversation, make the pie from scratch. Or you could take a shortcut, and you could accomplish nearly all of these tasks with less fullness. Sometimes, I admit, I fill my time to avoid another less desirable task. How many times has the sermon gotten written because the living room needed to be cleaned or the dishes done? Or sometimes I'm filling my time to avoid an unwelcome creeping thought. There are some weeks when everything I have done has been the procrastination of something else. Anyone else? All right. I hope so. I prayed. Another thing I love about the camera Obscura is that it flips the perspective. We can box ourselves inside of our own deeply held positions without even realizing it. But if you can sit with the mystery, if you can take a holy pause, you too can flip your perspective. Perhaps you have been committed to seeing things a certain way for a very long time, many decades even. The camera Obscura offers you a challenge beyond what can be seen with your own eyes alone. If you can have your idea reflected in someone else, maybe your perspective can be flipped. This, in many ways, is the dark room. This is where magic happens. And I admit I had thought for quite a while this week about how we could turn this entire sanctuary into a camera Obscura. You can do that. You can take a whole room and make it a camera obscura, projecting ourselves outward through a single beam of light so that all that we are could be fully seen and understood, so the perspectives we arrive with so preciously here could be flipped upside down. This is power being expanded through focus. See, imagine how much power you could wield in your own life, in your community, in your school. Guys, kids, students, I'm talking to you too. If you clarify your focus. Sure, you could do a million things marginally well, or you could do one deeply meaningful thing at a time. Okay, kids in elementary school, do any of you know what happened on September 15th? Like, what was September 15th? We had it just the other day. What was that day in school? Okay, yes. What? Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it possibly was also Rosh Hashanah. That was the 17th. That's a very religiously appropriate answer. Anybody else? Are Towns and Langston in the room? They did it. Ellis, I feel like, did you guys do this at school? Did anybody celebrate Dot Day? Yes! Dot Day. Okay. Did you know about International Dot Day? Well, you're welcome. Now you do. The dot, based on Peter Reynolds' wonderful book, The Dot, represents creative courage and focus. Convinced she cannot draw and is terrible at art, a young girl dreads her art class every day until an excellent art teacher encourages her to begin with a single dot. And as it turns out, that dot contains multitudes, and the dot unleashes unimaginable creativity in her life, and then in the life of the whole school and the whole community, and now the whole world. It's about the singular power of the perfect circle. We humans are not machines. The struggle to focus, hear me now, is not a character flaw. The struggle to focus is not a character flaw, but a very real cognitive issue and struggle for those with attention deficit disorder and ADHD. And it's true that sometimes people with ADHD do better with 2 tasks than 1, but only 2. As one of my friends described it, one single task doesn't allow them the spaciousness to be human. And the shortage of ADHD medication is a complex issue of our moment. But even with medication, our brains cannot always function like this camera obscura. See, it's not necessarily a deficit of focus. It's an inability to prioritize what others think ought to be prioritized. Others, like parents and teachers. It's about shifting attention. Our brains are not machines, yet the way we offer them input, and so the way we offer them input must be intentional and careful. There was a moment in the middle of 2020, it was December, and my kindergarten age kids, age 5, had spent 4 months learning from a teacher on their Chromebooks. It was like a laptop that they were given by their school. They couldn't, that happened to you too? They could not read, but they were expected to type. It was simply one amongst many surreal moments of that year, 2020, and I remember it well. I walked by my child who was seated in my home, because that's where we were having school, and his teacher was on the screen, was telling him something. The teacher he had learned from since August, it was now December, who had tried to corral 24 5-year-olds into paying attention to her on a screen with the whole world just beyond that screen. And I felt for her as she was faced with an impossible task. Yet we were all supposed to pretend this would work out and that our kids' brains would be fine. But we were worried. As I walked by, my child turned to me and pointed to his kindergarten teacher on the screen, the one who had been giving him assignments and trying to correct his behavior via computer all these 4 months. And he asked me a question. "Hey, Mom, is she real?" when I realized he was struggling not with shapes, nor colors, not math, nor reading, but reality itself, I walked over and I closed the computer. I barely had an answer for him. It's okay, honey. We're done with this experiment now. I put him in an outdoor school for the rest of the year where his brain could live in full reality the entire day. And he came home telling me about the bird's nests they found, about the vegetables they chopped, about the button that they sewed. And I wondered if by closing that computer, if we didn't save his attention span, allowing it to both stretch and focus. So the world has its agenda, and that agenda for you is more. More and more and more things to think, more things to notice, more things to fear, to buy. In order to sell you things, your attention is a precious commodity, and advertisers buy and trade on that commodity. This is why what was once a camera has become a content delivery device, bringing more advertising directly to your brain. But the pressure to behave in fundamentally additive ways, always adding more and more to our pile of thoughts, to our to-do list, is an impossible way of life, my friends. We simply don't need more. We don't need more stuff. We don't need more activities, and we don't need more work. The reality is we have to focus, right now especially. That is true for us, for UUCA, for congregations across the country. Our system cannot provide equal support for a lot of different individual needs and individual desires. We are not the iChurch, my friends. As a congregation, our mission gives us focus, as does our annual goal to increase our devotion to our spiritual life, our community. And you'll notice this year we are prioritizing certain social justice issues over others, certain activities and methods over others. We want to discover how far the power of focus can take us, how deep our impact can become in Atlanta, how strong our community, and how we can grow our souls with focus. And it is the new year somewhere. So it's a good time for resolve. It's a good time to even box yourself in a little bit, to hide in the darkness, to take a pause until a steady beam of light filters through, transforms your perspective, and illuminates a direction forward. Your power is unimaginable. If we were all to train our focus and alight on a single justice issue that we want to transform in Atlanta, or a single spiritual discipline we decide to deepen, if we could release the fear of not doing a million things, that you are not doing enough, just imagine. What if you are enough right now? Let our focus liberate us. May the single beam of light draw us out of the dark room, illuminating the next step forward and the one after that. By practicing the art of focus, we can expand our individual power, our collective power, and we can transform our world. May it be so.